Hello, and welcome to the Jared Hurst podcast. This podcast is about understanding ourselves, others, and the tools that you can use in order to transform your lives. This week, I want to talk with you a little bit about the subtle seduction of negativity. Now, you may think to yourself, I know exactly what this is going to be about, but maybe not. Before we get into that, I want to talk with you about a situation. Imagine that you have a moment in your life where somebody does something and you have a reaction. Somebody says something and you get angry. Now, who made that decision for you to get angry? You may say to me, Jared, I didn't make that decision. I just felt that way because of what they did. But the reality is that you did make a decision in order to feel that way. You made that decision, and you may have made that decision before it even happened. You had this moment in your life where you started to form a habit. You started to create a pattern of this is how I'm going to react in this situation. You made a conscious decision or even a subconscious decision in order to act in this way. Every time somebody gets mad at you, every time you hear it in their voice that they're upset, or you can see it in their face, every moment you can tell that somebody is disappointed in you, you already know beforehand, on some level deep inside your mind, that what you're going to do in that situation is you're going to get angry at them. You feel that anger flare the second you see that disappointment, the second that you feel that anger or that irritation from them. You may have a partner, and the moment you hear them get angry at you, you immediately go into a mode where you do everything you can in order to make them happy. You didn't start out that way. It wasn't from the moment that you started dating this person or from even the moment that you got married to this person that you started to act that way. At some point, you made a decision. Every time you had a moment where you felt rejected and hurt, you went into a state of depression and sadness. I'll give you an example from my life. So I had two different bosses at my old job. One was the owner and one was the CEO. So these two individuals would talk with me from time to time, sometimes weekly. They'd call me into their office, and I remember what they would say. They would say, Jared, how are you doing? Instant response from me. As soon as they would ask that, I would feel my shoulders slump. I would see my eyes would look down at the ground, and I would feel this wave of depression and sadness come over me. Even if I was in a really good space, even if things were going great in my life, the moment that they asked that question, I would go into a state of sadness. The reason that I would go into that state is because I'd created a habit around feeling that way. Now, what I'm talking with you about today is not about habits, though it does play a role. So I want you to think about the decisions that you make. I want you to think about the emotions you feel, the thoughts you have, the actions you take. And at some point, you made a decision in order to act a certain way. Now, for those of you that listen to the podcast regularly, or those of you that are in the world of personal development, you're familiar with beliefs, you're familiar with identity. But for those of you that aren't, we're going to give you a really quick crash course. Your identity. I'm intelligent. I'm attractive. I can't even talk today. You're intelligent. You're attractive. You're not enough. You're somebody that people don't really like. Those are identities. The way that you look at yourself. Your beliefs are things like, Once people get to know me, they won't like me. If I talk too much, people will get turned off by it. If I don't adapt my behavior to the people around me, they're going to judge me for who I am. Those are beliefs. So they're very similar, and a lot of the times they can seem like they're a belief, they can seem like they're an identity, but here's the thing, it doesn't really matter. What does matter is your beliefs and your identity are driving your thoughts, your actions, and your emotions. Those times where you feel that emotional response, that is a belief that you have turned into a habit. It is a decision that you're making on a subconscious level that I'm going to act this way. So we have these moments in life where we have these beliefs, we have these identities pop up, and we're very much aware of them. You have that voice in your head, that voice comes in, and you're like, man, I'm so stupid. That is your belief and your identity at work, and you are having a thought. And that is a very conscious thought. You're aware that you just had that. Now, if you haven't been working hard to become aware of those beliefs and those identities at action in your life, you may not really pick up on it. You may say bad things about yourself. Somebody gives you a compliment and you blow it off. Somebody says something and you don't believe it. You do something and you immediately criticize or say something to yourself. And it's a reinforcement of those things. Well, if you're working to change your life and you're trying to become conscious and aware and awake about what's going on, you may have started to pick up on those things. And so when a bad thought comes in your head, you turn it off. When you say something negative, you stop doing it. When you speak something out loud that isn't serving you, then you start to change the way that you say things, because our words have power and the way that you say something matters. My boss used to drive me crazy with this. We would be up talking in front of a group of colleagues. We'd be talking about our yearly goals, and I'd say, I'm going to do this, or I want to do this. It would be more like, see, it's so part of me now that I can't even say it the wrong way. So I want to do this, or I plan to do this. And she'd be like, no, you don't plan to or want to. I'm going to do this. So she'd make us correct the way that we'd say it. And sometimes we'd have to say it a couple of times until we finally said it right, because she believed that words have power. And so we'd start to correct it. So maybe you've started to correct your language. Maybe you've started to correct your thoughts. And part of that is not just stopping the bad thought, but it's replacing it with a good, empowering thought that's going to actually serve you in life. Or replace those words with good, empowering words that are going to serve you. You're doing all that, you're working hard, you're doing what you can to change your life, and all of a sudden, you notice one day that you've got those things taken care of. I'm cured, I'm done, right? You finally got it figured out where you're stopping the overtly obvious thoughts, actions, words, emotions that are not serving you. But this is about the subtle seduction of negativity. Now, if you're a religious person, you may have heard Satan is cunning and subtle. Or if you're not religious, trust me, this applies. Your negative beliefs, your identity that isn't serving you, will very subtly come in and influence the way that you see things. And it's so easy to miss it. It's so easy to miss it. I had this situation recently. I was interacting and having some connections. And when that connection wasn't going the way that I wanted it to, I started noticing all these things. But here's the thing. All of a sudden, one moment in time, I sat there and I realized that all the things I was noticing, all the things that were standing out to me, were a lie. They were all being influenced by a negative belief that was still there, hiding underneath the surface and influencing the way that I perceived the world. It is so easy to become unaware of the way our subconscious mind is directing the things that we notice and see in life. And when I realized how that negative belief was influencing what I saw, all of a sudden I found that the opposite was true. Everything that I was noticing not only was wrong, but was actually in direct conflict with what was actually happening in my life. So whether you realize it or not, those beliefs, those negative identities, they influence the way that we see things. And you, even if you are awake and aware and conscious of your beliefs and your identity and the bad coping mechanisms that you have and the ways that the bad habits that you formed, even if you're aware of those things, you can be going through life and not even see how it's still there, how it's still influencing and affecting you. That's why it's so important to become aware, because as you become aware, you unlock the power to make change. You become awake to your reality, to your decisions. But there's another level that you have to tap into. You have to start looking at your actions, your thoughts, and your emotions and question them and say, is this really true? Is what I'm thinking right now, is what I'm doing or feeling right now being influenced by something that I've been working on that I thought I've either conquered or that I know that I'm still working on? And if it is, then you have the opportunity to start shifting that perception, to start shifting those actions and those emotions. But you can't until you become aware and you take the time to recognize the tiny little details in your life and whether or not you're seeing the world accurately. It's really easy to miss. That's why it's so seductive. That's why it's so subtle. Because it just comes in and it changes things. I've talked before about if you're wearing blue blockers on your glasses, that all of a sudden everything you're looking at is slightly less blue, but you don't realize it because it's just the way that you see everything. And it's not until, even when I take my glasses off, I can't tell you that everything became more blue. But I know it's there because I paid to have it put in my glasses. And there's times when light will reflect off my glasses and I'll see a little speck of blue getting reflected back at something. And I know that it's blocking some of that light. It's the same thing with our identity. I know this is something that we've kind of talked about before, but the point is it's crazy how we can learn the same thing. And sometimes we have to learn it so many different ways in order to really get it down. I joked a couple of weeks ago on the podcast about how maybe I'm just dense, but it's actually that the universe is just thorough. Our growth, our development has multiple levels to it. And I think it's always going to be there. There's always going to be a new level where you realize that something needs to be shifted, where you realize and integrate something at a deeper level and transform into something new, which is beautiful. and what makes life exciting, because there's always something new to experience. So take this into your week. Start looking at the things that happen in your life. Question the things that you're feeling, the action you take, the way that you are looking at something, and say, am I noticing things that the way they really are? Or is it being tweaked slightly or greatly by something that's going on in here? I believe in you. I know that you can do it. And until next time, remember that you are not alone.